Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the content that we're throwing up. And make sure you guys hit the like button if you enjoy the video. And yeah, let's begin. What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we are back with World's Funnest Part 2, Mxyzptlk Bat-Mite versus the Spectre. And this is when things get pretty crazy, right? Because up to this point, I mean, I guess it was about as grounded as it could be, right? In terms of seeing some wonkiness take place. But with basically the Legion of superheroes from the future being destroyed, the Justice League being destroyed, Batman and Superman all being destroyed, there aren't really any superheroes left in the world. And so this leads to essentially Bat-Mite kind of disappearing and then Mxyzptlk chasing him down. And what Bat-Mite had done was basically go through and change every single sign seemingly across the world, although we only really see it in one city, to Mxyzptlk's name spelled backwards. And the reason why this matters is because, as most of you guys know, when Mxyzptlk says his name backwards, he ends up being sent back to the 5th dimension. And so it's just kind of like an attempted ruse. And that's literally what it turns into. You know, it's basically, you know, Bat-Mite just trying to ruse Mxyzptlk. And initially he almost kind of falls for it, but he basically realizes what's going on pretty fast. And where he's being surrounded by all these things, he basically just starts using his powers to start warping all of reality in the most extreme way. It's almost very Mad Jim Jaspers, you know, in terms of like the world being distorted, crooked, all that kind of stuff. And so this leads to one, the revelation that Bat-Mite and Mxyzptlk are equal in terms of power, and then two, both of them growing to enormous sizes and then chasing each other around the world, right? It really is just kind of like them running in circles. And so this basically leads to like them continually growing, getting bigger and bigger, ultimately until the point where they're basically as big as the world. Literally, there's one point where they're fighting at the Fortress of Solitude in the Arctic, but they're basically as big as Earth itself. And Mxyzptlk actually grabs the Earth to throw it at Bat-Mite, and then he's suddenly stopped by the arrival of the Spectre. And the Spectre's kind of like, this has gone on long enough, right? Like, this is kind of ridiculous. Your all's fight has laid waste to the entirety of the superhero community in the future and in the present day. You guys are basically using the Earth as just kind of like a means to battle each other. Like, this is done, right? I, representing the power of the presence, this is all finished. Mxyzptlk grabs the Earth and cracks the Spectre over the head with it, knocks him out, and the two of them leave. This is the power of Mxyzptlk now, right? Just like this insane level of reality manipulation. Now, as him and Bat-Mite keep on fighting, like literally they're taking like stardust and they're taking planets, galaxies, and like hitting each other with them to the point that they actually start to distort and then rip apart the entirety of the universe to the point that they end up completely and totally obliterating it, right? So between this fight that the two of them have, they destroy the entirety of the universe, right? And so from there, like Bat-Mite immediately goes and runs into hiding, only to arrive in the Phantom Zone. And Mxyzptlk chases after him. And this fight continues just like it did before. That Mxyzptlk, realizing he's in the Phantom Zone, basically ends up using his power to destroy the entirety of the Phantom Zone. This leads to Bat-Mite taking off yet again. And then of course Bat-Mite ends up arriving inside of Earth 2, right? Into that Earth 2 universe where he's met by the JSA, the Justice Society of America. And it's kind of cool the way this is written because it gives us a little bit of like a tour of basically Earth 2 that we didn't initially know that this was what it was, or at least Bat-Mite didn't know what it was. And of course, once you've got like Dr. Fate, you've got classic Superman, you've got Hawkman, Alan Scott, the Green Lantern kind of showing up here. Then it's like, okay, so like, well, obviously we're in Earth 2. And the funny thing is that because of the fact that Earth 2 was really designed to be kind of reminiscent of the 1940s, that Mxyzptlk's appearance has totally changed, right? To where he looks like a character that was drawn in the 1940s. And so of course the JSA is kind of like, okay guys, we got to do our duty. We got to track down these two guys and we have to defeat them. The fight ends like that. I mean, it ends in the blink of an eye. The only one that has any real fighting chance here is Johnny Thunder. And that's because of the fact that Johnny Thunder basically possessed a genie that allowed some measure of reality warping, but it's nowhere near on the same scale as what Mxyzptlk and Bat-Mite can do. And they end up completely and totally killing the JSA. This leads to the intervention of the Spectre yet again. Now, the Spectre, as they face him here, is one of these funny things because he's the JSA Spectre. And when he kind of shows up, immediately, just like all the other members of the JSA, one, he's completely killed, right? Like literally he's turned into glass and then shattered. This leads to Bat-Mite taking off yet again and then arriving in Earth 3, right? Where we basically have the crime syndicate of America, the evil version of the Justice League. These are the cool things that we get here. And this is why this story, World's Funnest, was exactly that. It was an amazingly fun story. Like it was absolutely enjoyable, right? The crime syndicate of America, the CSA basically, were basically criminals, right? Like it's, you know, for those of you guys who don't know, Earth 3 is a reality where everything's inverted. So all the people who are normally good guys are bad guys, and all the people who are normally bad guys are good guys, right? So Superman's a bad guy, instead of it being Wonder Woman, it's Superwoman, right? The Flash is a bad guy. You basically got Power Ring instead of Green Lantern. It's a cool concept, right? And it's one of these things where like they don't initially know, at least the crime syndicate doesn't initially know everything that's going on. Instead, they're only here for a moment, right? Mxyzptlk and Bat-Mite are only here for a quick moment. Bat-Mite basically bails out, takes off, and ends up in the universe of Uncle Sam, right? This is how all these things kind of transpire. They're just jumping from one universe to the next, from one reality to the next. They end up in the funny pages, right? They actually end up in Earth S for a time. Now, for those of you guys who don't know, Earth S, it gets a little bit murky here. When DC sued Fawcett Publications for basically copyright infringement because they had basically made a copy of Superman, as most of you guys know, this led to Fawcett basically going out of business and then DC getting the rights to Shazam. And so they basically kept him on a back burner because he was so similar to Superman and because of the fact that he was a credible threat to the Man of Steel in the sense that Billy Batson's character, he could fly before Superman. He had his own radio show before Superman. He was outselling Superman. DC didn't want to overshadow their top star. And so basically he was sat on the back burner for 20 years. Now, eventually when Shazam did come back, he came back in his own universe, right? They didn't cross over with the main DC universe. And it was called Earth S or Earth Shazam, where you had the whole Shazam family. And then you had like other weird characters, right? Like the Shazam Rabbit, right? Marvel Bunny, basically different things like that. And that's what this is, right? It's just a universe where everything's Shazam related. But Bat-Mite again takes off. He ends up in the world of the Zoo Crew. And the Zoo Crew, oh dude, the Zoo Crew, man. Captain Carrot. I love Captain Carrot. Captain Carrot's a super bunny. Dude, he's amazing. I love Captain Carrot so much. I don't even know why, right? But like Earth C, like the universe composed of anthropomorphic animals, right? It's all basically the JSA, but they're all animals. I wish DC would have done more with this, right? Because the Zoo Crew was awesome. I would love to read some stories about the Zoo Crew right now. Like, and in these trying times, I would love to read a story just about the Zoo Crew, right? Just anthropomorphic animals who are basically superheroes and Captain Carrot. I love the character of Captain Carrot. But again, you know, they don't last here very long. They basically teleport, or at least Bat-Mite teleports out of here. He's chased down by Mxyzptlk, and then they end up in the real world. And the guy you actually see there holding the pen, that's Julius Schwartz, right? This guy was instrumental for the introduction of the Silver Age in the 1950s. So he's the guy that came up with the idea of blending superheroes with science fiction themes. Him and like Edmund Hamilton and a few other people here and there. Gardner Fox also had a huge hand in all this, but they're actually terrified of the real world. They're like, this place sucks, and I can't blame them. And so they end up leaving. End up teleporting away. But again, that's how this whole process goes over and over and over again until it gets to the point where they're kind of out in this space. And Mxyzptlk, you know, where you have Bat-Mite trying to get Mxyzptlk to basically say his own name backwards, Mxyzptlk finally realizes, hey, I can cure this problem. So he ends up teleporting to the 5th dimension, which is basically like a Dr. Seuss looking place. And like they kind of make fun of him, you know, over the idea that he's been sent back to the 5th dimension by Superman who tricked him. And he's kind of like, no, I came to the realization that I don't really have to go back to the 5th dimension if the 5th dimension doesn't exist. And they're like, but I mean, if the 5th dimension doesn't exist, then like that would mean that we're not here anymore. And Mxyzptlk's like, exactly. He annihilates the entirety of the 5th dimension. He destroys the whole thing, right? It all gets wiped out. And so ultimately, it's kind of nuts because there's this moment where Bat-Mite kind of tries to get Mxyzptlk to say his first name, and I don't really know what the significance of this is. I've never seen this in DC Comics before. As far as I'm aware, the only importance of Mxyzptlk is if he says his last name backwards, which I don't know, kind of seems to be that maybe he's trying to get him to say his own last name backwards, which bears the question, if that happens, like, does he just not go anywhere? Is it just kind of like he's free forever and never has to go back to the 5th dimension if it doesn't exist? Or like, does he die? Does he cease to exist, right? He's trying to go back to a place that doesn't exist, and so he simply ceases to exist. I have no idea, and we're not given an answer. And the reason why is because we're done with this video. If you guys are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoy this video, make sure you drop a like. In the next video, we will have Mxyzptlk and Bat-Mite versus Darkseid. With that being said, guys, I will see you all in the next video. Peace.